Alright, well, I've been working on the Mack DM-600. It's a MPC kit versus the AMT. AMT is the other manufacturer, I guess. I guess one of the other main manufacturers of semi-trucks, trailers. Italy is one, AMT, this is MPC. AMT also has a Mack, slightly different model. So I put these, or wanted this striping on the rear fenders. I debated whether even to put fenders on the model, but one of the things about this kit and most of the kits that I build, I try to use as much of the materials provided and kind of build to the sort of to the program that the kit manufacturers intend. Now, a lot of times there's a two-in-one kits, that stock cars versus street, or stock versus racing. What I'm trying to say, you know what I mean. So they include all kinds of extra parts, and you can go either way. And along the instructions are kind of build a hybrid somewhere in between. You probably should actually call those three-in-ones, because I think a lot of people do that. They kind of split the difference. But you know, the semi trucks, I built a couple of these, but the other reason I wanted to do a Mack was on my home computer. I'm into simulation. I like flight sim. I like various simulations, and one of those is a truck driving simulator. Believe it or not, ATS, American Truck Simulator. And in that, there's a Mack truck that you can use, and this is the paint scheme that I more or less use on the Mack that I have in the simulator. So that was another reason to go with this, with the fenders and with this paint scheme and so on. So I'm not going to be putting the AC unit on the roof. I may or may not add the bull bar to the front bumper. The kit includes a small sort of a bumper accessory, and I'm not sure I'll use it. But anyway, that's the reason for this paint scheme. Kind of a Pacific Northwest, kind of a logging truck sort of a thing is what I'm going for here. And anyway, I'm still in the process of painting the cab. You see, I've still got it masked for the white. We'll leave all this on, and then I'll just mask for the green, which is essentially just going to line up with this hood line here. So we'll mask it off here where this green comes off. So that'll probably be roughly just below the air cleaner scoop cut out. And what I'll do is I'll have it come back in a straight line here, and then about, I don't know, the first quarter of the door we'll drop it down again and go around and wrap the back. I'm still debating whether or not maybe I'll make the cabin roof green, just along the trim line here. Just paint the roof green. I might do that. I'm leaning towards doing that, but right now the initial plan was just to carry this green line, carry this line back, and then kind of do another cutout and around the back. I'm still debating. There's two ways I can go. I can either buy the logging trailer. AMT puts out a decent logging trailer, and I want to say that with that trailer, I think, if I recall correctly, there is a logging headache board. It's the open framework, kind of looks like a butterfly wing at the top. I'm pretty sure it came with that trailer kit. I built it once years ago, and I want to say that kit includes that part for the truck, but I'm not certain. I've got a flatbed trailer I could put behind this for pictures, or we can leave it, you know, unattached. So I've got the steering working. I don't know why, it just was a challenge. I thought I'll go ahead and do that. The wheels roll. I used a piece of aluminum tubing. The kit provided a muffler and stack, the canister here and the stack. The example that I had, the stack parts were really skinny. I mean, it came out like a beanpole. I mean, it was literally, I mean, this diameter. The stack pipe, and that's too small, obviously, and it was a little bit misshapen through the mold process, and so I used this diameter tubing, just cut it at an angle, and slipped it over the existing pipe. I cut the pipe down to about here. The existing, or the pipe that comes off of the canister here had a bend and angled opening at the top, and none of that would have fit in here, so I just sliced it off right about there. That gave us ample enough material inside for support. So this is the end result of that maneuver. We got a nice stack straight pipe out of it. These are obviously going to end up on the truck here and here. One other issue, I noticed in other videos, build videos of this truck, people were having trouble with the frame. A couple of different videos, the builders had encountered a twist or an unevenness to the frame, or difficulty in the frame assembly. I didn't find that, so it's possible that my example was different than theirs. But I did note, and I could tell that, you know, that was something that would be easy to encounter based on the construction method. In other words, the way I went about this was from back to front. Just initially just cemented the rear divider in place here, and I flipped this. In illustrations, it's turned the other way, and it's recessed. This end is recessed, and I wanted it flush here, so I flipped this around the other way. I don't think that has anything to do with what the topic is here, but that's what I did. That's why this looks maybe different than on your example, if you have built this. Or when you see the kit instructions, you open that up and you'll see this is actually in the instructions, it's flipped the other way. It's these openings, these holes are recessed. I have the recess on this side. Anyway, so I start with this end, and we just lay the two components flat on the deck here, and we begin at the rear, and then we go to the next divider and place that and hold it down. And when I'm gluing stuff, I don't use rubber bands. Rubber bands can create a twist. You start pressuring something like this, a parallel beam assembly, with rubber bands, and there's no continuity structure. There's no panel on the bottom. There's no panel across the top. It's just two rails, and you're putting dividers in, and you're wrapping this with something, tape or rubber bands. You're going to create a twist. So I just, you know, use my hands, and I use a medium super glue, and just a dot of it on each end. I don't coat the ends. I don't want it to fill the whole thing. I just want to put a dot here on each side. So what we're doing is we're getting the super glue, and we're tacking that up, and we're holding this, pressing downward against our flat deck and together with our fingers. And we did the first section, the first two dividers installed that way. Then we go to the next two, these two here, and the same thing. Once those first two are dry, the second two are inserted with the drop of super glue, and that's held and pressed, the whole thing being held down to the deck. And then once those four pieces were dry, and that's an hour. I know this is super glue, it sets up quick. I let it cure. Dry is one thing, cured is something else. It's the same with paint. I think a lot of people run into trouble with paint because they get in a rush, and they think, well, that feels dry. Well, it may be dry, but it's definitely not cured. In other words, it's going to be susceptible to the oils from your fingers. It's going to be susceptible to lifting off with removal of tape, all manner of things that will happen with paint that's dry but not cured. So anyway, getting back to the framework and laying this thing up, just a drop of glue on the end of each of the dividers, holding and using finger pressure only, and pressing against the deck. The deck will keep it flat against the deck. After those 4 pieces are set up with the super glue and it's cured, we come back in with this stuff and just paint it on. All right, I use a paintbrush. These come with brushes. I mean, they're pretty inferior. This one's already gone. If you lose the brush, something happens to your brush, don't worry about it. Just get a fine paintbrush. Right, you dip this in your paint thinner, and it takes the glue off. It's fine, reusable. You can paint anything with that. Right, just because you're using it with the glue doesn't mean you can't use it for anything else. But use a paintbrush, and you just come in here with this stuff, and you just paint liberally everything else. All the super glue is doing, it's just a tab. It's just a button of glue. This stuff, when you coat that in there, it's going to melt and adhere everywhere else. All right, with this adhesive. And that's a strong bond. That gives you a really good bond. And again, as you're doing that, you want to apply a little bit of pressure. Not so much as you did initially, because it was already cured with the super glue. All you're doing here is creating a weld now on the rest of the surface area. You're welding. Think of it that way. All right, gluing, welding. All right. So now you've got these all painted up, and the rear end of this thing is straight, flat, and square. And then you just build out toward the front. You put in the rest of the dividers out to the front. Now you've got your frame. It's flat and square, and nothing can change that. You've gone back over these joints and welded them with the wet glue, and on you go. So the kit build was pretty straightforward. The only changes obviously I made was to accommodate the painting. So I built the frame up and then painted that. And we built up the transmission kit, the axles and transmission cases, and didn't put the wheels on, obviously. We just built up the rear end, painted that. Built up the front end components, and then actually I painted those. Painted the front end components and installed them. That's how we did that. Built up the initial assembly of the engine. I think the steps 1 through 3 we did construction. Didn't paint anything until steps 1 through 3 were done, and then painted that. So you can see the recommendation that I found, and in fact I found a YouTube video of this engine, a Mack engine from I think it was a 1970 or 71 build, and it was for sale and had been refurbished and restored, and it was painted just like this, just in that color, just kind of a pale blue gray, and that's every component. And I hit it with a panel line wash and just wiped it all over with a Q-tip. Just use the end of a Q-tip to kind of let that brush in, or kind of brush it on, and then coming back and hit it again with just the paintbrush in here, and just let it run down the engine here and there, a few places. So that got us our engine. Now the other thing I'll talk about quickly is this part, the plastic piece that comes off of this, I guess manifold, but I don't know what the hell you call this. I should know, but I can't think of it. Anyway, it comes off of that and goes into the I guess that's a ram air turbocharger or whatever. But I just replaced that part. It didn't fit. It bent in the wrong kind of shape. I tried heating it up and reconfiguring it, and that didn't work. So I just used a piece of solder, and I use this in a lot of applications. I use this on model aircraft to replicate on radial engines. I'll use it to replicate the exhaust plumbing on that. You can use it as roll cage material. This stuff you can use for just about anything. It has a nice metal finish. You can cut it with wire cutters. I've even used, I've got an older pair of these nippers that I use. You can cut them with that. You can use just about anything. You can use a razor saw if you want a real straight, flat, clean cut, and oftentimes that's what you do when you want something like this, a joint here and here. So that's what I used, is a razor saw to cut it, and then just bend it into the shape you need and super glue it in there. It'll hold forever. Super glue holds it just fine. It it doesn't care that it's solder. It doesn't care that you're making a dissimilar material connection. Super glue tacks it right up. So that's what this piece is. And again, there are a few other parts here that I may yet have to change. I'm not sure if this component's going to fit or not. And here I had to modify this one. This piece in the end here, this little smaller diameter ring inside of here, is made from Evergreen Plastics. Evergreen Plastics makes plastic tubing. And this piece was way too big. It wouldn't fit into the nozzle on the front end of this part. Wouldn't fit in there at all, but this fits really nicely. So I just drilled out this end of this part and sunk in a piece of this material that's about 1/8 of an inch overall, maybe a little heavier, and just cut it off like here, and then stuffed one end of it into the pipe. And now it fits right in there. I don't know if you can see that, but it just fits right in. It just fits right in here, nice and clean. So hopefully this part will fit to the front end of my cab. I'm not sure yet if it does or not, but it's ready. If it does, it's ready to go. If I need to extend it, that's a good thing, because I know what to use. I'll just take another piece of this and drop it into this end, make it fit that way. If it's too long, we'll cut it down. In one way or another, that's going to fit. This is the air cleaner. Cut it down. The air cleaner they provide you with is a stack cleaner. It's tall. I don't like this. I don't like the tall cleaner. I like the shorty. It's gonna fit. It's gonna fit right up in here. So I cut it short. Just sawed it off with a razor saw, and we'll just drop this right on here, and we'll have our cleaner. So that's that. The interior, I just went with a basic Oliver black. This truck was primarily used on construction sites. It wasn't really an over-the-road hauler. So basic, inexpensive was the rule. The interior had to be durable, capable of withstanding a lot of abuse, and so